So, today here I'm going to be teaching you guys some basic tower placements. This is the basics of tower defense games, how to place each type of, well, the beginner types of towers, and how to use them, when to use them, and all that. So, starting with basic placement, you're going to want to place towers where they can see the most track. Just for most towers, you're going to want to place them where they see the most track. So here I put them in the middle of this entire zone, so they can see the entire roundabout here. If I placed it like here, it would not be able to see as far up here or this way. Next, there's also sniper towers. Sniper towers must be placed on cliff towers, and they follow the same rules. You want to place them where they can see the most. I'll place this guy here. And so these guys, these guys are just single target basic towers who will, kill things one at a time. Next, there are AoE towers. These guys can hit multiple people as long as they're close. Like, there's an explosion radius. So it varies what you want to do with targeting on these guys, but you can leave it at first for the most part, and it should be fine. They kind of follow the same rules as these. However, because they are AoE, AoE stands for area of effect, which means they just can hit multiple enemies. Well, more specifically, that it's like an explosion. You want to place it in front of your single target towers. These guys who can only take out one at a time should be placed behind the people who can take out multiple, because these guys will take out just low HP enemies, while these guys can take out any high HP who get through this guy. Moving on, next we have spawners. Spawners should be placed away from your other towers, so they do not block any good placements. Like, you have a limited area to place, so while these guys are great in the middle, like here and whatnot, eventually you're going to run out of space, and you'll have to place them somewhere less optimal, like out to the side here or something. So, to make sure you don't run out of space that fast, you want to place these somewhere you wouldn't want to normally place a tower that deals damage the normal way with range. So I'm going to place this guy here, here, and here. These will spawn troops from the back, and for most spawner towers, they will just follow across the lane and with a set amount of HP and kill enemies in their way, dealing a total amount of damage as they have health. So let's say there's like a 20 HP spawner. It will run through all enemies until it's done 20 damage, and then it will break and will be spawned again in like 60 seconds. They can stack as well if it's a long map and it takes longer than 60 seconds or however long these things spawn to get from one side of the other, the map to the other. A second one will spawn while the first one's still going. Now I suppose we should get to support towers. In this episode, I guess it's an episode, I will not be covering abilities, so this is just a basic support tower without an ability. It provides a buff to all towers in range. You want to place this that covers the most amount of area that you would want to place towers. See, I don't cover like here or here, because these guys don't cover much track while here. However, they cover a lot of track all around here and whatnot. And also, if you can, try to avoid placing it in a place where you would want to place one of these. See, if I placed this here, it would be too far away to see much. So I placed this here, so it could buff all of the other people that I placed down here. Of course, there's also upgrades. Upgrades are all very individual tower based. There's no general rule to them. Sometimes you want to account for upgrades while placing. So if I placed a demo man here or whatever, I think these guys are called demo men. Yeah, I don't use them very often. If you placed it here, it wouldn't be able to see anything. However, this guy buffs range, so that gives an extra bit. And if I upgrade him further, he will begin to see the track. So if you have a ton of money and plan on just immediately upgrading it a bunch, you can place it on places that it wouldn't even be able to see to begin with. So, past that, I suppose we could talk about targeting. If your single target towers overlap with your area of effect towers, and you are certain that nothing's going to leak, like these spawners keep anything from leaking. Leaking is when an enemy gets through, and yeah, just when an enemy gets through. Because if you target these guys strongest, it will be beneficial because otherwise they might attack an enemy that would have been killed by this anyway. However, it also means, oh god, these should be hit. Yeah, these should be taken care of. It also means that, as you see here, they don't fully kill the enemies. They just let them through. So, it's great if you have something else to kill the enemies, which I do in this case. It's military bases. I don't think they're going to spawn in time. Nah, they will. And these are hidden enemies, of course. There's usually a variant of these in all games, where only certain units or certain upgrades can see them. In this case, it is signified by this little eye here. This guy doesn't have it, so he can't see, neither can these guys. So they couldn't attack those. However, these do have metal. They can break metals, which this is more this game specifically. Not all games have metals. Usually spawners are a weird case. In 90% of games, they will be able to hit hiddens perfectly fine. However, there are some games where even like cars and whatnot will not be able to hit hiddens, and they will just phase right through. So it's a bit game dependent, but usually you can rely on these guys to hit hiddens. Now, what else should I talk about? I guess I could talk about supports a bit more. While they are good just to place like early on, so first of all, to make sure you have a spot for it, because if you're later on in the game and you've just, let's say, spammed a bunch of people and you have no room for it, that's going to cause an issue. So placing it early can be beneficial. However, its lower levels don't give that good of a buff. So unless you specifically have a use in mind for the 10% buff, I usually would save it until a bit later because it's expensive, and just buying another tower would be better than buffing your current few towers. However, now that we are further in the game, I will upgrade a bit. And here we have a discount. This discounts on support towers are very handy, but sometimes it's pretty hard to guess whether or not you should be spending on the discount, or you should be spending early to make sure you don't die. It really depends, but sometimes you can just save up money, and then once your person with the support gets that discount, you can just spend it all and save 10% or 20% if they max it out, which that can be very useful. But most of the time, it's best to just keep your defense up to date. I think that's mostly it for placement. Of course, there's also, you gotta place it more compact than this. This is pretty terrible. I'll just get rid of all of them. A more ideal would be, sometimes when you're placing the very first tower, you want to have it in mind. In this case, I don't think I had other towers in mind when placing my first one, and so I can only place 2 sides by side here, you see? But it's actually entirely possible to get. Can you get 4? I don't think you can get 4, but I'll check. Yeah, no, you can get 3, but I don't think you can get 4. But yeah, you see, you can fit way more people if you just take some consideration into mind when placing. Which I didn't really hear, but it turned out alright. If you have like an AoE, this guy isn't attacking the grouped up enemies, which is what I want. You can change its targeting. Looking at him, he's probably closest to here, which is early on in the track, perfect. If I placed him on last, which I actually could do. Sometimes when placing, when targeting last on your towers, on your AoE towers, it doesn't do well because it hits the very front, and half of its area of effect is outside the boundaries and will never hit any enemies, which is not a good thing. So it is sometimes best to just like leave it on first, like here, or you can also put it on closest to the tower, which is perfect because there's going to be many enemies in this little location because it's right up to by the front of the track, and it'll make full use of its entire effect because there will be enemies in front and there will be enemies behind. If you target first, the first half of your AoE is usually entirely wasted because there's nothing in front of the first enemy. That's a bit more complicated, though. If you just focus on placing where it can see the most track, making sure you have room for other towers, and making sure all your towers are buffed, pretty much, and putting AoEs in first, in the front, you'll do just fine. Usually you don't need to worry too much about further stuff. That's more advanced. You shouldn't have to worry about it too much. Oh. Might die here because I was not paying attention. But just with those basic techniques, you should be able to do plenty fine and get super far in your games. There's also skipping, but unless you're in dire need of money, or you are trying to go fast, don't want to waste time, then usually skipping is not a good idea if you're just focused on winning. Yeah, I'm gonna die here because I was not paying attention. I should have upgraded one of my snipers earlier. But yeah, that was just my guide to the beginner's basics of placement. So, hope you guys learned something, and I might be making a more advanced one later. But for now, that's all.